Hello and welcome to another episode of The Living Philosophy. Today I want to dig into the spiral dynamics of one of my favourite series of novels, which is the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. Now if you don't know about spiral dynamics, you might want to check out our introductory video on that. Otherwise I'm going to just dig right in and explore around the world of Asimov's Foundation. So Foundation is this future vision Asimov has. It's thousands of years in the future when the entire galaxy is all one big republic of planets, or empire of planets. Actually, it's the empire. And what happens is this is at the very the tipping point in the empire where it's about to run into decay. And so there's this one brilliant psychohistorian called Harry Seldon, and he comes up with a plan to create a place called Foundation, which will preserve all the knowledge of science for the future. And it will create encyclopedias, it will be spread throughout the galaxy so that everyone will have the knowledge. So if we go into a dark age, the knowledge will be preserved throughout all the planets. That's his stated intent to the Empire. And so the Empire give him this planet on the edge of the galaxy, and it's called Foundation. And the main city on it is Terminus, and it's a planet with almost no resources, and it couldn't be self-sufficient, so it needs to rely on its neighbours and the Empire. But what we see as the story progresses is in the first 50 years, the Empire begins to decay, and Foundation loses contact with the Empire itself, which kind of abandons it because it's beginning to crumble and just draw its boundaries inwards. And surrounding Foundation there's the Four Kingdoms, and these kingdoms break away from the Empire, and now Foundation finds itself surrounded, hemmed in by these warring different factions, these warring kingdoms of a few little planets. And what we've seen already here is the decay so as the Empire has fallen away, these empires of red, so the Empire itself would be this great orange behemoth, and as we see it breaking down, you've got these tribal and driven warlord structures of the Four Kingdoms emerging, while Foundation is this hub of the yellow value meme. It's got all the science and the solutions for very technical problems, and it's the only place that actually keeps developing. So we see that these still have nuclear reactors, while the Four Kingdoms no longer have nuclear reactors, or if they do, they no longer know how to maintain them, and so they just fall into disrepair. And it's the same happens with the Empire, that you see this hyper specialization, but then as its resources grow thinner, it's unable to sustain its previous level of technology, whereas Foundation preserved it because it had gathered all the knowledge of the universe to it under the pretense of creating an encyclopedia. But as we see, it moves beyond that. So it begins like that, but then it reaches a crisis where these Four Kingdoms want the knowledge of Foundation. But due to some antics of the first mayor, Salvor Hardin, he manages to thwart the Four Kingdoms. And this is where something really interesting happens, because you get this yellow homeland of Foundation surrounded by now these red kingdoms. And when they manage to thwart them, they manage to strike a deal with them whereby they're going to give them technology. But they're not just going to give them the nuclear reactors, because then they'd just destroy Foundation, or they'd just capture it for their own empire. So what they do is something very, very interesting, and I love that Asimov has done this. He takes the Foundationers, they take their scientific knowledge of reactors, and they create a religion called Scientism, and they export this to the Four Kingdoms. And in those Four Kingdoms now you've got the nuclear reactors on all their ships and on their planet, and so you've got this export of the scientific knowledge, the maintenance of the scientific knowledge of the Empire, but it's run by this priestly caste. And so the priests are the ones who run the reactors, no one else can do it, and the priests are trained in Terminus on Foundation, and they're trained just like normal priests, and this is how you create the thing, and this is how you work the reactor. So those priests don't know any better than the people in general. They just know a bit more than the people of the Four Kingdoms, and they know enough how to make the reactors and the technology work, but they couldn't create it themselves. So you can get people from the Four Kingdoms becoming priests, but they can't actually take control of it. They're actually as superstitious as the people, and they believe that it is a religion. And I guess this comes from that old saying, I forget who said it now, that any technology that is sufficiently advanced would appear as magic to less civilized people. Very interesting idea. And so Asimov has taken that to a very interesting place, where now you have these four kingdoms who have technology, but it's turned into this blue religion, and they all believe in this magical religion of science. And just such an interesting twist that they've got there. So you've got these red and purple empires, these warlords, these little kingdoms, and now they've been brought to this higher thing of the blue or higher purpose. And we see over the next few hundred years that Foundation actually ends up usurping the four of those kingdoms, basically the power centralizing it more and more, and they take that power into themselves. And then we enter the next phase of Foundation's history, and what we've learned is that Harry Seldon wasn't trying to just create an encyclopedia. He was trying to lessen the length of a dark age from 30,000 years to 1,000 years, and that's the role of Foundation. And so we see that we're a few hundred years in now, and none of the other people, so the four kingdoms are now party with Foundation, under the hegemony of Foundation, but the other planets around, the other civilizations of the now decayed empire, they don't want anything to do with it, because to them it's just like they're just, I guess it's like us looking at Jehovah's Witnesses or just little religions that kind of creep us out a bit, that we don't know how to feel about it, and we don't want to be part of it, and we see how much those people within it give up to it, and so they just don't want to do it. But Foundation still wants to expand its influence, and so you get the new generation after the mayors is the traders, and the traders, they start trading, they start giving the bits of technology, toys or just little things at first, to these other planets, and they kind of set aside the religion, and they're just trading for the sake of trading. Now they're not telling them how to make them or anything, but trading for the sake of trading, and they're just thinking they've just got an eye to profit, and then that begins to grow. And we see that the other civilizations around are, of course they want that, of course they want the newer goods, the more advanced goods, and especially if they don't have to take the religion. And so we see the expansion of Foundation's little notion with their religion into a commercial empire, and so they start trading with all the other civilizations around, and slowly but surely, because they're the center of all that power, they integrate more and more of it, and they take control of their sector of the universe. And so what you see is interesting. You got like the decay from Empire, which I would say is probably around Orange. They seem like the very pinnacle of Orange, and the cynicism and the edge of nihilism that kind of come with that. But you've got the purity of the knowledge and the science in Foundation as a sort of a yellow level 7 on the spiral dynamics kind of thing. But then as the Empire decays, you get these warlords, these level reds kind of coming up and taking the power for themselves in those four kingdoms. And so they've got like this tribal and warlord kind of vibe to them. So they're the purple or red level. They're reds controlling purples at that point. But then when they get thwarted by the little world of Foundation doesn't give them the power, because they know that a red will just use it to destroy them. But they manipulate that by moving them to the next level. So they take those reds and they move them to the level of blue, giving them a religion, giving them this higher purpose that all kind of unites them under the banner of Foundation. And now Foundation is this yellow dot, which is kind of, it's losing its yellow thing. It loses its purity as time goes on, I guess. Initially it was just a foundation of scientists and all that. But we see it's probably still yellow at this point, to be fair. They take control of these other planets. So you've got Foundation, this yellow little planet, takes control of the four kingdoms, these reds and purples, and moves them up to the level of blue, gives them a religion, gives them something to believe in. But then you see the surrounding planets, the surrounding kingdoms, see that happen, see how Foundation takes control of them, and they don't want that. They don't want to just become subservient to Foundation. And so we see Foundation working with those people through the level of Orange, raising them up to the level of Orange, where they're just trading with them, where they've now moved their empire from this blue thing of like a religion to this orange thing of trading. And of course people want the goods, so they start trading with all the worlds around, and that brings them into a bigger and bigger kind of thing. So that's the initial spiral dynamics of the first book of Asimov's Foundation thing. There is actually an interesting thing that later we see a more pure version of yellow with the second foundation in later books. I think it's around the third book. And then later again we see with the idea of Galaxia and the idea of Gaia, we see this idea of turquoise emerging. And it's a very interesting turquoise. So it's a planet-wide turquoise becoming a galaxy-wide turquoise. But I might take that on in a different video where I explore turquoise more. But I just found that interesting thing at the beginning of Foundation, of the decay of the civilization from that level of imperial galaxy level empire into this interesting new thing that Foundation is, and how it manages to build things back up quicker rather than just going into a dark age where there's no science for thousands and thousands of years. So I thought I'd share with that with you today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching.